Casey Joyner on the Boardwalk Auto Hotline. He's probably like, who's this calling me right now? Of course, he called Casey on the wrong phone. He got yelled at for that. But that's what happens when Josh is out for the day. But Casey Joyner joins us to talk a little NFL. This weekend on the Sports Bash, of course, we've got you covered. And tomorrow, the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, all right here on 97.3 ESPN. Casey Joyner, my friend, how are you?
Oh, yeah, got a little bit gut punch today because Neil Peart passed away. So it was a tough way to start a weekend. Like great drummer from Rush, but looking forward to some football. Gonna spend some time watching Beyond the Lighted Stage, the old documentary, and I actually got a Rush Wandering the Face of the Earth touring history from my family for Christmas. So gonna be able to do some memorying. So.
Wow. Yeah, Moshe, you brought that up earlier. I was a little surprised, but we were talking about all these old guys all day. That got thrown into the mix as well. But
kind of scary for us old guys.
Yeah, unbelievable. All right, let's look at the football this weekend. We got the divisional round matchups. This is typically the best weekend in football, and let's kind of kick it off with that as Casey Joyner breaking it down with us here. Let's start off with that first game on Saturday as Kansas City takes on the first game is Minnesota taking on San Francisco on Saturday. That's the 4:35 game. We'll go with that one to kind of kick things off here. And can the 49ers in that defense really be the biggest factor in this game? Because Minnesota's got some weapons on offense here, but that defense of San Francisco is a little bit different of an animal.
It is. San Francisco allowed 24 more offensive points in each of the last 4 games and 29 more points in 3 of those games. It's like, their defense is starting to struggle. And some people thought it might be Richard Sherman, because he was a little banged up with things. But he's not the coverage issue because he only allowed 24 receiving yards and 4 targets for the last 4 games of the year. But the problem for the 49ers is that Kella Witherspoon, their other cornerback, he allowed 9 completions on 13 targets for 129 yards and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 games. A few things, though. They can rotate Emmanuel Mosley in place of Witherspoon. Mosley's much better cornerback than Witherspoon. And the 49ers get Dee Ford, who had 6.5 sacks in roughly 6 games to start the year, and then he got hurt. He's coming back. So double-digit sack guy. They get Quan Alexander, a run-stepping linebacker, and they get Jaquaski Tart, a great strong safety who can shut down tight ends in coverage at the best yards per target made tight end or any strong safety in the league this year. So it's like getting 3 starters back in their lineup. So I think it's a big plus for them.
Let me ask you about Sherman and what he's, because everybody remembers him from Seattle, and I don't know if he's as high profile as he was, but what does he mean to that defense?
He's the best cornerback in football before he got hurt. I mean, again, he still played well when he came back too. He's a shutdown corner. He knows how to bait quarterbacks. He knows how to set quarterbacks up for the things he's looking for. And teams, again, they're just not throwing a lot his way because you've got coverage weaknesses elsewhere. But the 49ers would like to funnel their defense through him because you can play coverages in a way to say, okay, remember Darrelle Revis back in the day when he was a shutdown corner, the Jets would have their defense funneled his way so much that Revis would lead the league in targets despite leading the league in yards per target. It was incredible. So I think the 49ers would like to do that. And getting those starters back in the lineup, getting 3 starters back, I think it may allow them to do that.
Got Minnesota's defense, I thought was the difference last week, man. I thought they really gave the Saints some problems. And but what about the coverage issues they might have?
Xavier Rhodes got beat last week, and you see that discussion he was having with Harrison Smith, and you could see Smith was like, look at his face like, dude, you've been blowing coverages all year. What are you talking to me about these bad coverages? And the numbers would say that that's correct because Rhodes, this is incredible. He allowed this year, per ProFootballReference.com, he allowed an 81.5% completion rate and 9.7 yards per attempt this year. I think the 49ers are going to go target him as often as they can because they didn't have great receivers, but the way Rhodes is playing, he can make a good receiver look great.
These are 2 teams, Casey, that like to run the ball, fairly amount, or at least a lot, to set up what they do in the passing game. So do you kind of see this as a like a slower type of game, a kind of a two ball controlled teams going at each other? Maybe that limits possessions and keeps the score a little bit low?
I would think that both teams want that because San Francisco, they don't want to get into a shootout contest. I mean, they've got the weaponry to keep up if they need to, but if you're going up against the Vikings and you say, okay, they've got Thielen, they got Dix, they got Rudolph, they got Irv Smith, they got Cook, they've got Madison if they want to. They can even go 3 deep with Boone at the running back. I mean, they have so much talent on offense. You don't want to try and go into a shootout contest with them. So I think they're going to want to slow the game down from that possession. And at San Francisco or Minnesota is obviously going to want to do that too. Problem for them is that the 49ers only allowed opposing running backs to tally 100 or more yards against them 4 times this year and not once since Week 9. And they haven't given up 50-plus receiving yards to running backs since week 9 either. So they are really good, strong against backfields, and they get Alexander back.
Do you see a scenario where Kyle Shanahan tries to draw up a scheme that's going to specifically get Kittle matched up one-on-one in man versus Barr?
I would hope they would. That would be an absolute mismatch. Shanahan's the best play caller in the league. I really believe that when you look at the things that he does, it's not just he can set up matchups the way he wants to, and there's ways that he sets up his passing game that he can actually do. He sets up the looks for defenses that he can confuse them with different route combinations in ways that other teams can't. So I think he could do that, but I don't think that Minnesota has anybody in their secondary right now who I'd like in a one-on-one matchup against Kittle. So if I'm Minnesota, I just take that away from him and say, we're not going to play man coverage against you. We're just going to sit back in zone and try and stop Kittle, but I don't think that's something that's going to necessarily help them either because Kittle can kill you zones.
Yeah, then it's tough to stop the running game if you do that.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And you have to stop the running game against San Francisco because they have one of the best good blocking rates in the league.
What about Dalvin Cook and his role in this game? Because getting him back obviously is a big help for them. And Thielen had the catch of the weekend last week. I mean, without that catch, I mean, who knows if they win that game? And he's a little banged up.
Cook is a game breaker. San Francisco doesn't allow a lot of big plays in the running game, though. They're very disciplined that way to where even if you get good blocking against them, they're good at shedding their blocks, good at safeties coming up, so it's going to be hard for him to get a game breaker. And I think it's going to come down to, as Thielen, for as good as he is, I think around and these things can change based on coverages and on different things, but it looks like that Thielen will probably face up against Sherman most of the time, which leaves Witherspoon or Mosley if they move Witherspoon to go up against Diggs. When you add that together, that's going to be the key matchup because Diggs isn't getting much in the offense this past week, but I think he'll be a more focal point of this offense. And if he gets something, then they can get some plays going. But if they can't get Diggs going and Thielen gets shut down by Sherman, it's bad news for the Vikings.
KG Joyner talking NFL. Of course, game 2, we got Titans and Ravens. Ryan Tannehill. This guy has really surprised this year. I mean, he's kind of led them to this spot. I mean, they were one of the better offenses in the league when he took over. So, when you look at Tannehill and you look at Jackson, do we look at a lot of points in this game?
I wonder if it was Tannehill this year. This number blew me away too. He had more production on play-action passes than Lamar Jackson. He actually had 1,055 yards on play action, 84 play action attempts this year, and Jackson at 892 on 163 attempts. It just shows that Tennessee tends to go more vertical on their play action plays, and it also shows what A.J. Brown can do because A.J. Brown is a phenomenal receiver. It can do it this early in his career is incredible. And right now the Ravens don't have they tear the top off the guys, and Tyler Brown's done nothing over the past few weeks. So I think the Titans would like to do that, but when you look at the Ravens coverage guys, they got red-rated coverage players all over their secondary. There's no weakness in their secondary from that perspective.
And I know they have Henry to run the ball with, but Tannehill has been, kind of a breath of fresh air to this offense here. What's the best way to attack the Ravens?
The best way to attack the Ravens, I think if you can. I think they would want to get it into a shootout contest in some ways if they can, but then again, that's trying to get breakaway runs with Henry. I think that's going to be tough against that defense. I think that if I'm the Ravens, the only thing I want to do is shut down. As crazy as it sounds, I want to shut down Brown. I know they're a Henry-centric offense, but if you take Brown out of the contest and say you're not hitting these big plays, then Henry has to do it all, and it's tough to stop either of them. But I don't want a guy who can break off 50-yard gains in the passing game more than I worry about Henry because I think they can keep him slowed down to an extent. So I think that's what they need to do. But for Baltimore, the problem for the Titans is they try and turn it into a shootout contest. All three of their starting cornerbacks last week, they allowed a 65% or higher completion rate this year, and they all allowed more than 70 yards per attempt. They got nobody in their secondary, including Byard, their former top free safety and former all-pro free safety. He had a mediocre year in coverage. So I don't think they have anybody in their secondary who can slow down the Baltimore passing game.
Right. Now, let's say your defensive game plan is just, we're going to make Jackson beat us through the air. Is that something that you think that in a playoff setting that he is capable of doing at this stage?
I think against this defense, he could. If I'm Tennessee, though, I keep thinking that, look at their coach. He's a former linebacker, and a former linebacker sees a mobile quarterback. What's the first thing a linebacker's going to think when he sees a mobile quarterback? Hit him. Hit him early. Hit him often. So I think they're going to say, if you're going to run RPOs, we're going to do, and there's some people on Twitter who are doing some great breakdowns on that. Guy named James Light is doing some terrific tape breakdowns on it to show that what defense is starting to do now is when you run the RPOs, they don't read anymore. They say when you're going to run the option, we're just going to attack it the way they do in college. We're going to have one guy go for the ball carrier, we're going to have one guy go for the quarterback. And if you're going to allow Jackson to keep it, fine. Well, you can let Jackson run, and he's dangerous. We're going to hit him. We're going to hit him as often as we can, and that's the way he got rattled in college against Houston, one of his worst games in college, one of the rare bad games he had in college, because Houston had Oliver on the defensive line, and they were able to just dominate Louisville's offensive line. So I think that's what they're going to look at is nothing else has stopped this guy, so let's see if we can hit him and do it.
I know Tennessee's corners are I would assume that they're not both red-rated, right? I mean, that's kind of an area that maybe they can exploit the Ravens, but so perhaps Hollywood Brown, kind of big day if he's able to play?
If he is, he had fewer than 23 or fewer receiving yards in 5 of his last 7 games, so he just hasn't done anything. They need him to step up so badly because it's the one thing if I'm the Ravens I'm scared about. If Brown and Henry both have good games, okay, you can match Henry in the running game. You can do that. And yeah, they've got Edwards, they've got a good tight end, but can you match Brown's impact to really tear the top off the defenses? If you don't have Hollywood tearing it up, no, you don't. So I think he has to play and he has to have a good game because if he doesn't, I think that I still think an upset's going to be tough to come by, but I think it's more possible than people think.
Yeah, I mean the way Derrick Henry is running right now, it almost doesn't matter to me what your defense is ranked because he's just plowing through guys. The Patriots have a good defense, and he shredded it. So I feel like the Titans are going to be in this game, Casey, and it might just come down to execution in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, they're getting 9 points. I almost like Tennessee to cover, even with the Ravens probably winning by a slimmer margin.
I think that it's going to be a very close game, and I think there are more paths for the Ravens to lose this contest because, again, their running game is good, but Ingram's a little banged up, and I don't want to see Jackson taking hits. And like I said, Tennessee defense will take hits. And if you're going to start to play small ball with them, you're going to try and do that. I'm looking at these two teams going, I know Baltimore set the league record, but I'm saying, okay, you going to play power ball? You want to go ahead and try and play smash mouth football? All right, well, if I'm doing that, if you want to do that and challenge Tennessee to keep up, I like Tennessee's odds of keeping up because of the way Henry's playing right now. So if I'm Baltimore, you got to think about going a different path. But again, A.J. Brown, they're going to be challenged. Their secondary is great, but A.J. Brown's a guy who can beat anybody in coverage if he plays well enough.
All right, let's go to Sunday. Kansas City is obviously a favorite here, taking on Houston. And, look, the one thing with Kansas City, we all love their offense, but their defense has been playing better.
I posted on Twitter about a week and a half ago that the Chiefs are winning as much of defense in the ground game as they are anything else. And the reaction of Chiefs fans, you would have thought I said that Andy Reid came back to Philadelphia or something. They just went insane with God, we hate you. You're terrible. Like, what are you talking about? Like, the Chiefs led the league in points allowed over the last 6 weeks of the season, and their defense is playing tremendous. And they do lose free safety Juan Thornhill. He's out with a torn ACL, and he had the lowest yards per target among safeties this year and the third lowest passer ratings. He's very good, but the guy they're going to put in his place is probably Daniel Sorensen. Daniel Sorensen only allowed 6.1 yards per target on 55 targets, so that's still a good number, and the rest of their secondary is very strong. I just look at it and go, okay, I don't think that Houston's going to have a great passing game like they did last week, even if Fuller does play.
The rushing attack, too, with Kansas City, I don't think we think about that as much as you kind of like with Andy Reid. In Philly, he threw. But this Kansas City team, if they had to, they can kind of go with their defense and their rushing attack if they need to. But do you think they need to against Houston?
I don't think they need to, but Andy Reid has shown in Kansas City that if the situation calls for it, a couple of years there with Kansas City, he was a very run-heavy coach. It's not what he wanted to be because given the choice, he'll pass the ball every time if he can. But the Chiefs had the ground game the past couple of years, and this year they have a solid stable of backs. They don't have a bell cow, but they have Williams, they have McCoy, they have 3 guys. And the Texans allowed 124 or more rushing yards to opponents in 6 of the last 8 games this year. So that means Houston's given up plays on defense. I know they got Watt back, and maybe things are going to be different, but I just think Kansas City's going to be able to put the ball on the ground, especially you just say that Mahomes runs for 30 yards, and you only need 70 yards from your backs to get 100, and I think they'll easily do that.
Yeah, and it's a Houston defense, too, by the way, that gives up, 124 a game on the ground. So I guess if you want to, you can run the ball at least to set it up for some big play action. You
can, and Houston's got coverage problems across the board. They rank third in average depth of target allowed, which means teams are going vertical on them, and they allow the 5th most yards after the catch. So they don't tackle well, or you can get behind them, and there's just a number of issues in their secondary. And I keep looking at them going, okay, you don't stop the run very well. You don't stop the pass very well. Kansas City can pass the ball. Kansas City can run the ball. They've obviously got Mahomes who can do what he can do, and not only that, they've got a defense that shuts people down. I'm looking at Houston going, okay, I'm not seeing too many paths to victory here.
Yeah, no, if we're sitting here wondering how Shanahan's going to get Kittle matched up against Anthony Barr, I got to think the same thing about Andy Reid and any of his weapons against Vernon Hargreaves. I'm sure that he's looking at every single possible combination or way of attacking Hargreaves when Hargreaves is on the field.
They almost have to do. It's illegal now, but there was the old Bill Belichick thing where you could go on the line of scrimmage and you would have 2 players.
I remember that.
Yeah, he plays the tight end like punt coverage, and yeah, I think they need to do it with Hargreaves because he's so bad. It's like you better do something to help him because you can't just give him help over the top because they'll just figure out which way the safety's playing and go the other way. I mean, yeah, I think Houston's got some pretty major problems. They have to turn this game into a shootout. It used to be you could do it at Kansas City. You can't do that right now, at least not a percentage play.
Right, I was going to ask you. I think a lot of people like the Chiefs, but what's Houston's path to victory?
They have to they've got to turn it into a shootout contest. They got to hope that Sorensen's not nearly as good as his metrics would indicate, because if he's a weakness, then they can go after him. But they got Matthew too, so it's not like you can't move him around to go, do what they want to there. So, but if they can go after Sorensen and hit some big plays there, it's what they need. They need Fuller to play. They need him to play at full strength. They need Hopkins, and they need to try and go vertical as often as they can. I think that's their only path to victory, is to try to get this into a 34-31 game and hope they get a turnover.
All right, Casey Joyner with us breaking down the matchup. The final one on Sunday, Seattle and Green Bay. Beast mode is back. This will be his 3rd game. What has he meant to that Seattle offense? Is he the key to that offense?
He might be, but when you look at the game last week, everybody's talking about that touchdown run. Great touchdown run. I mean, mind you, great effort, breaking tackles, and I mean, against a strong Philadelphia run defense. But remember, the running backs for Seattle only gained 19 yards and 17 carries. That's the one play, and you're like, okay, guys, how about the other 16 carries where they did nothing? And, I mean, Green Bay's allowed 100-plus rushing yards to opposing running backs in 5 of the last 8 games of the year. So it is a weakness for them. But you could gain 4 times as many yards for Seattle's running game, and they still don't get over 100. And plus, they've got injuries all over their offensive line, so I don't know that they could give them a good enough run blocking for Lynch and Travis Homer to getting traction on the ground.
Yeah, I don't see how Green Bay can hit Seattle. I'm sorry, Seattle can hit Green Bay where it hurts. As you mentioned, the Packer run defense can be exposed, but Seattle doesn't have a great running game right now. Seattle would like to probably get the ball to, guys like Metcalf, but Green Bay's corners are pretty good. Green
Bay's secondary they rank 3rd in interception percentage. They were 3rd in completion percentage, 8th in yards allowed after catch. I mean, this is a very, very they're not a shutdown secondary, but they're very percentage secondary, and they are where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be. You don't get them making mistakes, and they will pick you off if you force passes into coverage. And Wilson, he may have to force passes into coverage just because they're not getting the ground game going. He's got to do something. They need to make sure if they can keep him in the pocket, they can keep Zadarius Smith, and they can keep Wilson in the pocket and make sure he can't scramble for plays, because that's where he can hit some of the big plays and maybe make that defense lose some of its contained. But if they can keep him from that, I think Green Bay's got a lot of paths to victory.
What about Seattle's defense, which if you ask Philly fans, they're the 86 Bears. They only gave up 18 points to them in 2 games. But is that who they really are?
Seattle's defense got some problems. They've allowed opposing running backs to rack up 100-plus scrimmage yards in 10 straight games. I had to double-check numbers. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is supposed to be Seattle's defense, and they're not great, but 100-plus scrimmage yards in 10 straight games, and they allowed some before that. It's like 13 for the course of the whole year. I mean, you're just basically going to get that much. And now you've got Aaron Jones going up against that defense. You've got Jamal Williams coming back, and they might get Bulaga. The last report was that he had been practicing this week, but he hadn't yet cleared the concussion protocol. But if he clears the concussion protocol, now you've got improved right tackle play, and now you've got 2 running backs to go along with everything. I mean, it's all trending for the Packers.
Casey Joyner here on the Sports Bash. We're looking at the divisional round of games, and you got Minnesota on Saturday, San Francisco. You gave us the breakdown. How do you see that one going?
I see San Francisco probably winning that game pretty handily. Minnesota did what they could last week, but San Francisco getting those starters back on defense. It's like, again, getting 3 starters back, and plus with everything else they have and the advantages they have going their way, I just think that Minnesota's got a very small chance to win that game.
All right, Tennessee's going to Baltimore, and the Ravens a strong favorite.
Strong favorite. I agree. The Titans probably cover. I think that this is going to be. I think people think it's going to be 80-20 for the Ravens to win. I think it's more like 60-40. I think the Titans have a good chance of pulling the upset, but I'll take the 60 and take Baltimore.
I do like this Titans team. I don't love them in this particular matchup though, but I do. I picked them to win last week. I like them this week. But I just feel like the Ravens are kind of the real deal Holyfield here. You know what I mean? Like I feel like this isn't a 14-2 Morale team. I think they are a really good football team. Let's go to Sunday, Houston, Kansas City. How do you see that one going?
Houston's got it tough. I mean, if they don't turn it into a 34-31 game, they're not going to win. And the way that Kansas City's defense has been playing is they've got that one weakness of free safety, but I don't think that's going to be anywhere near enough. They have so many paths to victory. I think it's 90-10 Kansas City wins this game.
All right. And then the last one is not to score 90-10, by the way, right?
No. 90% win, 10% yeah.
I will take the over.
And then, of course, you got Seattle and Green Bay, which is a matchup of two great QBs.
Wilson is a guy, he's that possible difference maker, and he can sometimes manufacture a win, but they've got so many weaknesses going into this contest. And again, with Jones and Williams and probably getting Bulaga back, when you add all of that up, there's so many paths to victory. I would go 80-20, again, not the score, the percentage. For Green Bay.
NFL Insider Casey Joyner here on the Sports Bash. And, of course, Monday he'll be back to recap all of the divisional round action. And we are going to be getting down to the championship weekend, sadly. You know, there's a sad part of it all. But we will have him back on Monday at this time right here on the Sports Bash. Have a great weekend, pal.
Appreciate it, guys.